Okay, how's it going, everyone? For those of you who missed workshop number one, my name is Scott Nishimoto. I'm the Executive Director of Seeds of Peace. I'd like to welcome you all to our second of four sessions in our Peace Building Workshop series. And we're just really excited to have you folks here on a Saturday morning. As I mentioned at our last session, joining us, we have DOE teachers, we have DOE counselors, we have private school teachers and counselors, we have nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, we have artists, parents. We also have some students as well. So it's really special to have this many people from this many diverse backgrounds and identities all coming together in this Zoom room, committed to peace building. Like I said before, oh, sorry, I'm just gonna mute this person. Okay, our mission at Ceeds is to raise peace building leaders, and through workshops like these, through youth workshops, through trauma sensitive training, through facilitated conversations, we are committed to wrapping youth and the rest of our community in peace building practices. And we couldn't do this without all the support that we received. So this particular workshop series was made possible by the support of the Nale Aloha Foundation, as well as the H.T. Hayashi Foundation. So let's give them a little virtual round of applause. We're also supported by our team of facilitators who you'll re-meet a little bit later. And most importantly, we exist because of our co-founders, Dr. Carrie Urosevich and Dr. Maya Sotoro.
It's really great to see everybody this morning, and just want to thank everybody for coming together on your Saturdays to help build peaceful and just communities together. It's really important that we all do this in collaboration. It's hard work. It's also joyful work. And so we're just really blessed to have all of you here. I do want to just do a shout out to Scott. Scott's in his first full week of having a newborn. And that is always very hard. And the fact that he's able, right? The fact that he's able to pull off our second workshop, very sleep deprived, but also sitting in a grateful space is really awesome. So thank you, Scott, for pushing through this week. I know it hasn't been easy, but we'd like to welcome baby Rui to our Ohana here at Seeds of Peace. Okay, so what we'd like to do is start with, again, the big welcome. So if I can ask everybody to take a really big, deep breath, and we'll get ourselves centered for today. Maybe take one more big, deep breath. Okay, I'm so honored to welcome you all here to our second of four Seed Saturdays. Take a moment right now to allow yourself to fully arrive. Allow the dust to settle in your mind. Bring your attention to your body, your breath, this present moment. You have arrived. Welcome. We welcome your excitement and your trepidation, your clear inquiries and your big question mark faces. We welcome your wide eyes and your open hearts right alongside your side eyes and cynicism and skepticism. You are welcome here. Your culture is welcome. Your ethnic origin is welcome. Your race, your skin hue, your accent, food preferences, and all of the complexities that make up your cultural identity are welcome here. The histories, her stories, and experiences of your ancestors are honored and welcomed. We welcome you with all of the connections you bring in with you to your children in your lives, your partners, your siblings, your parents, the animals in your lives, and other loved ones in your communities. You are welcome here. We welcome your spiritual practice, your religious affiliation, your spiritual walk. However you hold that aspect of your life is welcomed. Your love is welcomed here. How you love, who you love, and your understanding of what love is are all welcome. We welcome you in all of the ways your sexuality has and is unfolding. We welcome you in all of the ways your gender has and is unfolding. We welcome you in your ignorance, in your privilege, your grief, your guilt, and your shame. You are welcome here. Your quirks and ambiguities are welcome. We welcome your humor, and we welcome your silent contemplation. We welcome the parts of yourself that you're still figuring out. We welcome you in all of the roles that you carry with you today as entrepreneurs, activists, healers, intuitives, parents, caretakers, students, teachers, counselors, artists, change agents, magicians, educators, and warriors. We welcome you at whatever level of mental and physical wellness you are currently functioning. We welcome your introversion and your extroversion. We welcome all of the experiences that led you to this moment. Thank you for surviving. We welcome your wounds and your scars, your emotions, all of them are welcome as well. Thank you for bringing your ancestors with you. We welcome them also. We welcome your sacred connections to the lands on which you are conceived, the lands that hosted your births, and the lands of your ancestors. The lands that we are standing upon and all of the life that came before us, the animals, the indigenous peoples of this land, Native Hawaiians, and all of our islands. We welcome you to this land here, where we have prepped the soil for you to sow the seeds of your leadership visions. Let your roots sink into this nutrient-dense soil today, intertwining with the roots of everyone else here on the call, and connecting to the root systems of all of the other living things around here as we collectively build our capacity to lead change. Settle in and welcome. Thanks, Scott.
Mahalo, Carrie and Scott, for grounding us in such a lovely way. I want to thank both of you for being partners in this endeavor, and I want to thank all of you who have arrived today for showing up with your creativity and your courage. I would love to ask you to put as a warm-up into the chat for today, what is your North Star for your action plan? We will be working on your action plans, and our friends at Smallify talk about the need to have a North Star in mind, a guiding star, a vision for what you want to accomplish through any project, and then also near star goals, right? And so our action plan process, we will be breaking down sort of those discrete and smaller goals. But to begin with, I'd love for you to put in your chat, what is your North Star goal for your action plan today? And I'll write that down in chat and look forward to seeing some of your answers, and give us a couple minutes for you to do that. Great. So empowering girls, a sense of belonging for our students, deepening relationships, connecting communities, your haumana, your children, peer understanding, a sense of belonging for all. Beautiful. A kind welcome for all, regardless of national origin. Empowering students, competence, peace, and beauty. Students respectfully connecting. Clarity of vision, to become clear in the shared vision you have with your colleagues, loving your students, compassion, cooperation. Beautiful. Connecting relationships with students, inclusivity, care, communing, critical thinking, and a community mindset. Beautiful. Keep those coming by all means. But wonderful to keep those North Star goals in mind as you begin your action planning process, to ensure that their energy, their vision, their purpose, and the feeling is intact and present in the work that we are doing together. Back over to you, Carrie.
Thanks, Maya. Naomi, could you please switch the slides? Thank you. So our mission at Seeds of Peace, we're a 360-degree approach to raising peace-building leaders. We support and build bridges between families, community members, and educators to share resources and develop action plans to strengthen our communities and improve our children's lives. I just want to remind everybody the 360 approach is wanting to make sure that when our young people walk in the world, whether it's within their families, their communities, or their school environments, that they're getting that same messaging around why a peaceful and just community is so important, and then their kuleana, their responsibility to helping lead towards a peaceful and just environment. Thank you. Next slide. The Seeds of Peace framework is how do we do a better job of building and planting the seeds in ourselves and grow our critical thinking skills, our skills in being courageous. It's not always easy, but how do we build those skill sets? How do we then build those skill sets with others, practicing our conflict resolution skills and our compassionate listening? And how do we build and plant our seeds in community through our commitments, our collaboration, and our connection? I think one thing we always want to reinforce is that these seeds don't grow separately. These seeds grow in the same garden. And it's important to have in your action plans, be asking yourselves, am I planting the seeds of critical thinking? Am I planting the seeds of compassion, of collaboration? We want to plant as many of these seeds as possible because they don't operate in isolation. We always like to tell the story of it's great to have a lot of courage, but if you don't have compassion, that courage can be really dangerous, for example. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Maya did the warm up.
Yeah, we can skip this one, Naomi.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. So this is our roadmap over the course of this workshop series. As you might remember, on day one, we focused a lot on understanding our why. We discussed today's unique challenges and we set those North Stars, those visions. We focused on the C skills of a connection and courage. We introduced some specific skills and we began the action planning process. So today we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into what these barriers to these visions, to these North Stars are. We're going to focus on two other C skills, so commitment and critical thinking. Again, we're going to introduce more specific tools and strategies, and we're going to continue the action planning process with steps 2 and 3. Next slide, please, Naomi. Oh, okay. And on day 3, so I don't know the date right now, but sometime next month, we're going to be putting the pieces together. We're going to be focusing on more C skills. We're going to be reintroducing more specific tools and strategies, and we're going to finalize the action planning process. Then on day 4, our final day of the workshop series, we call our share out, where you folks will have the opportunity to share and showcase your efforts, your action plans to inspire all of us and make commitments to this work and really just celebrate our journey as peace builders, because it's hard work. And because it's such hard work, I think it's very important to recognize ourselves and celebrate what we do. Okay, next slide.
Okay, so why do we do this work? We always like to start with, kind of spotlighting some of the challenges that we have. We have here locally unresolved Indigenous rights issues. This is also beyond Hawaii. We have, high numbers of child abuse and neglect, which unfortunately has increased as a result of COVID, along with domestic violence. High attempted rates of suicide for our youth, 10 to 24. And 4.3% of Hawaii high school students have tried meth at least once. So we have some protracted conflicts, and the reasons that we highlight these is these are the big whys, right? When we're doing our work and we're working with young people, how do we make sure that they have the skills to work collaboratively across sectors, for example, to solve some of these problems? How do their families show up to be problem solvers to prevent, these bigger issues from happening? We also have all the COVID challenges with the divisions that we have around our shared responsibility in ending this pandemic. And so it takes all of us. There is no sector, there is no niche of society that can solve these issues. It really does take intentional seeds to do it together. Okay, next slide, Naomi. Beyond Hawaii, we have, again, high suicide and drug overdoses. Many of you know about 40 million are under modern slavery worldwide. Women and girls disproportionately affected at almost 71% of that total. US mass shootings have risen, although violent crime has decreased, so that's good news. And then we have more than 2.3 million incarcerated, which is a 500% increase over the last 40 years. So the interesting aspect of these 4 data points is these are systems problems. These are systems injustices. And so how do we collectively impact those systems and change them for the better of our societies? Next slide. Adverse childhood experiences. This is something really important for all of us on the call. We know that in Hawaii, 60% of our keiki have more than 2 adverse childhood experiences, which include abuse and neglect, and then household dysfunction. So everything that we are doing in Ceeds is focused on safe and happy and joyful homes, safe and happy and joyful communities, right? And how do we do that together? Next slide. And then Maya somehow got lucky with the good news.
I love being the bearer of good news. Mahalo, Carrie. Yes, so there is good news. Of course, we at Seeds of Peace want to have a strength-based approach. So in Hawaii, we want to highlight that we do have the 4th lowest gun death rate in the nation. We have a 7-point increase in the percentage of 3rd graders reading near or above grade level. And although the pandemic has brought new challenges, we are making clear educational improvements as well as societal improvements. We only had 2 hate crimes reported in 2019 at a time when unfortunately it was on the rise in other spaces. We have the 4th healthiest state based on low mortality, smoking, and obesity rates. There is also good news to be had elsewhere in the world. So outside of Hawaii, next slide, please. We are seeing a rise in youth-led movements in particular, but also just participatory movements from frontline communities and individuals, from individuals, spaces, and voices that have too long been silenced or in the shadows. And there is a clear evidence that this activity, this movement building, that this participation is yielding results, albeit slowly, in policy, in systems change, in organizational culture. Next slide, please. And there are things that we can do about the ACEs. So part of what we can do, as Carrie mentioned, is to build proactively communities and school spaces and families of safety. Preventative work to prevent the ACEs before they happen is our best goal and the most effective long-term solution for safe, stable, and nurturing spaces and environments of good health. That being said, we also have a wide range of new strategies and tools for post-traumatic growth, for healing, for wellness, for care, and for shared endeavor that can heighten people's sense of leadership so that they can help and contribute effectively to beloved community and can address the needs of children in their own lives and elsewhere. Next slide, please. We need to look at the social determinants of health in ever widening concentric circles, right? So beginning not just with the individual, but moving collectively to family, school, workplace, neighborhood, community, and systems, because those problems are systemic. But there are ways that we as individuals and each of these organizational spaces can enter the stream, can impact those systems, can contribute. Goals and your actions are really about impacting those systems, even if you are looking at discrete problems nearby. Your work in the aggregate will inspire hope and action, will bring together families, community members, school staff to learn strategies for raising peace-building leaders. And in so doing, you'll be shifting mindsets, reframing work, and helping others to understand the value of action-centered approaches to peace building. Next slide, please. We can do so much. And so the reason we share the good news after the bad news is to highlight that by learning concrete tools and activities that build peace, by developing deep commitments to peace building, by becoming champions for our children, by modeling positive behavior, by teaching critical thinking, problem solving, and solutionary leadership, we can, in fact, impact the problems that we see. And so you should feel only optimism and great enthusiasm for the work that we are doing here today and for your individual and collective efforts. Next slide, please.
Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Maya. And I just want to iterate what Pohai said in chat. Social determinants of health are systemic. It brings it down to individual health, right? 100%. So not only do we, if we get the systems right, it will trickle down to individuals, but also as individuals work on their own health and safety, it trickles up to systems change. And so it really is two-directional. Okay, so what can we do? We're going to share with you, similar to last, well, first thing I want to share is when we think about humans and we think about humanity and how are we doing together? How is our species navigating together? There are some challenges. And as Maya had shared, there's also a lot of bright spots. And we would not be in this work if we look longitudinally that we haven't progressed and that the arc of development and the arc of the human experiences aren't bending towards more socially just and peaceful communities. So the good news is if you look over the last 100 years, right, we have improved. We've improved significantly. We have blips. But I just want to really reinforce to everybody that we are moving in the right direction as humans together. And that's why we do the work that we do. We would not continue to do this decades and decades if we weren't making progress. So the first video we'd like to introduce is by our beloved Rita Pearson. She's an educator who has since passed away. So I feel very fortunate that we can still bring her voice to the table for all of you to hear and be inspired by. So as you listen to Rita, what I'd like you to think about is what child in your life, what young person in your life could you be a champion for? Right? The research shows that children that are struggling really need one committed adult in their life who really cares about them, that they know that they can go to. And so I'd like you to think about that as you listen to Rita.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
It is not impossible. And that's why we wanted to emphasize the good news and why your actions are the good news for today. You know, what she says is so true, that we need to ensure that we're not feeling dispirited, let down. You know, we need to have and preserve a sense of resilience, and resilience will be our resistance to all of the things that are happening in the world, to us and to our keiki, to our communities, right? And so we want you to use this opportunity, these tools, to do, as she said, to find ways to lift, to boost, to be a champion for another. And in doing so, enliven a sense of possibility in yourselves, in the spaces where you work. And this is different from being just Pollyanna, right? This is not about sticking your head in the sand. It's about finding and creating a sense of a restorative narrative, a sense of possibility, an opening, a crack in the cement where something can grow, right? And those places and spaces and possibilities surely exist. And we know that we can contribute to that growth. But we must retain that sense of commitment. Carrie, do you want to say something about our friend in the video we just saw?
Sure. I think we often talk about the 5 to 1, right? So it's the 5 compliments to everyone constructive criticism that we provide to our youth, to our colleagues, to our spouses. And we're really bad at it generally as humans. So how do we, I love when she says, minus 18 sucks the life out of you. Plus 2 isn't all bad, right? And so as we navigate our days with our family members and with our young people, how do we flip that narrative and flip that frame? And how do we do the 5 compliments for that one constructive comment? So that's one thing I'd like to share. And then just, you know, Rita, I think does such a beautiful job of talking about the really critical importance of relationship and committing time and committing space for those relationships with the people in our classrooms and the people in our families. So if I could ask all of you, as you think about, and you don't have to do this if you feel comfortable doing this, please put the name of the young person who you feel that you can champion and put their name in chat. Good, I see Rustin, Keahi, Makana, Kevin, Olivia, Eric and Noel, KK, Braden, Alex, John, Olivia, Spencer, Daniel and Styles, Isaiah, Cruz, Michelle, Niley, Ezekiel, Mark, Laakea, Kanak, Ikua, Ryder, Natalia, Charlie, Justin, Cody, and Chelsea, Lewis, Abby, Pohai. Nice. So if we think about all of those young people that we've now just put into the center of our room, we're the 360 around those young people. So thank you for naming them. Thank you. Next slide. So the second commit tool, and I just want to share, this is Scott's wife, Tiare, and their daughter, Ellie. Soon to be Rui will be in the picture upcoming. The next tool is just the I am here for you tool. And so when a young person is in the throes of anger, panic, or emotional outburst, often their minds and bodies are experiencing a stress response, whereby they literally feel unsafe, either emotionally unsafe or physically unsafe. So instead of yelling at them and isolating them, which is often our gut instinct, let them know they're safe. Try saying, I am here for you. I love you. I care about you. You are safe. Make it very explicit that they know that. Then sit still and let the emotions rise up and pass. This is a vital skill of resilience. Not only are you helping them provide space for the emotion, but you're also modeling to them what that looks like to sit with discomfort and respond in nonviolent ways. So thank you. Next slide. Maya. She gets all the positive work.
Thank you. I do want to emphasize that teaching is vital, and many of us here are educators who are very deliberate in crafting positive, productive, thoughtful curriculum. But we also need to think about modeling. And we need to think critically about how we do that, because modeling is so impactful. The way that we walk in the world, the way that we model communication, the way that we model that connection and that commitment to one another is so instructive, and has, research shows, actually a greater impact than direct instruction. So let's play this video.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual
Toxic
harassment.
masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it?
It's likely happening here in Bullying, as well.
A problem
We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says it's
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie. Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool, not cool.
Some already are. In ways big
Yo, men, we're
and small.
I am strong.
But some is not enough.
It's not how we treat each other, okay? Okay.
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
So that was pretty powerful to me. And the fact that it's a Gillette, project, that's actually important, because what it signals is that we can begin to impact these issues wherever we are, using a wide variety of tools. Like, right, it isn't just the work of nominated elected leaders. It's not just the work of, people, in the classroom, that wherever we are, utilizing whatever tools of whatever profession in which we are embedded, that we can make an impact. It's about choosing to participate, right? And in fact, this video demonstrates that every day there are these opportunities to get better, to model, to guide, to challenge. So I recently wrote this op-ed on violence, and it talked a lot about the sort of toxic masculinity of my youth. And a friend with whom I went to high school wrote to me. He's currently an educator at Punahou, and he said he remembered one of the things I talked about, which is that as the girls were passing by the sort of athlete bench, and that some of these young athletes would hold up signs rating numerically the girls as they walked by. And he said, I remember that. He said, I didn't participate. I remember thinking it was wrong, but I didn't want to, kind of make myself vulnerable to the athletes doing that. And I didn't say anything, but I'm so grateful now that I get to be an educator, and hopefully the way that I teach and model for masculinity for the young man in my orbit can compensate for my silence. Then he was a kid too, right? So I of course do not hold him accountable for his silence when he was a teenager, but it's important to realize the impact that we can have, whatever age and from wherever we sit, and that these small things make a difference in the aggregate in terms of the culture that we create, those microaggressions, of course, but also on the flip side, the positive things that we do to nourish a sense of compassion, responsibility, caring communication, tenderness, emotion in young men. Those things also make a difference, and can bit by bit do enormous sums of good. So, Carrie, did you want to add anything?
I'd just like to add, for the researchers on the call, it's a pretty fascinating research that Epstein did. I forgot his first name, but when they look at children's behavior and what shifts children's and our young people's behavior, whether it's what they're hearing versus what is being modeled to them and what they're seeing, it was a strong disproportionate lean towards what's being modeled and what they're seeing versus what they are hearing. Which is very humbling. It's humbling as parents. It's humbling as school staff. And I'll never forget my my middle child, Hanalei, who's actually in earshot, so she'll probably be laughing when she hears this. But I remember when she was 7 and we were having this, I was upset and I was talking with her and she looks right at me and says, "Mom, that's not very peaceful language." It was so shocking. I've spent 25 years in the field. And I was not using the peaceful language that I was trying to teach her to use in her own life, and appreciate that she held me accountable. And so being really mindful about how we're showing up and how we're modeling these skill sets that we're trying to embark on our young people is equally as important. Thanks, Maya.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Carrie, you want to take this?
Sure. So this is a tool modeling self-awareness. So at meal times, we think about all of those opportunities to model, right? At meal times, during our commutes, when we're driving, for people from Oahu, when you're driving and stressed out in traffic, be very mindful of the words that you're using in your car. Whenever there's time to talk with the teen, let them know how you are feeling and why. For example, you might say, I'm getting a bit anxious about the holidays coming up. I'm happy to spend time with family, but I'm also nervous about taking time away from my new job, right? Oftentimes how we're feeling, we don't verbalize how we're feeling to the young people around us. And the more explicit we can be, the more they understand context, and the more that we model our own ability to talk through our own emotions and our own reactions, right? By creating an opportunity to discuss your feelings, you're letting the teen see your emotions in a healthy way. This provides a safe place for the teen to talk with you about what they're feeling. And so one of the tools in our toolkit is called modeling self-awareness, and giving names to those emotions that we're feeling. And even in those moments when you are locked in that conflict with a young person, or even a partner, taking that step back and saying, you know what, this is how I'm feeling right now. And this is what's contributing to those feelings, right? And it's modeling the self-awareness. It's also modeling the naming of the emotion. And then it's modeling the pause. I love the concept of the great pause. We often don't do that very well. And so even having that in your back pocket when you're in that moment of, we need a pause. And how do you do that physically? And then how do you do that emotionally? Back to you, Maya.
And I think that a big part of what we need to do is both finding moments in that day, and this is kind of what Carrie's saying, where we can engage in micro modeling, right? Finding those opportunities, but also creating spaces for reflection, as well as processes, patterns, and opportunities for others, especially young people, to reflect on what has been modeled, to reflect on what they're thinking, that great pause that she's talking about, so we have tools like that we've shared, like Rose and Thorn, where you go around the dinner table and you talk about the roses of your day, as well as the thorny bits, or the pohaku bowl, where, where every family member can have a pohaku, a stone in the bowl, and they can talk about the things that matter to them. But just finding these opportunities to reflect, to process what has been modeled is also important. That spaciousness is vital. Next slide, please. So this is a program that many of you might be familiar with. This is, well, actually, there used to be a magazine, Teaching Tolerance, put out by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It is now changed in name because of the need to lift up justice versus mere tolerance, and the recognition that that is vital. But this is our friend Amber Strong Makayao, who's an educator at UH, but also in the independent schools. She does a lot of professional development, and she was the Teaching Tolerance Award winner. She and Patricia Halagao, also our friend, have really led the process too of bringing in curricular materials that Teaching Tolerance did develop, the Perspectives in Diversity curriculum, which I'll talk about a little more. But let's look at this program, which she and Chad, Dr. J, who's also been our panelists, have really spread the Philosophy for Children program, which models and creates space for reflection, for critical inquiry, for deep dive problem solving. So let's take a look at this video from 2011.
I teach ethnic studies and philosophy at Kailua High School, and one of the approaches that I use to designing curriculum and to teaching this course is to be a culturally responsive teacher. I'm acknowledging that my students come from various different backgrounds, and I'm seeing that as a strength, and I want to craft a pedagogy that capitalizes on that strength in the classroom.
I felt uncomfortable assuming which ethnicity everyone else was, and uncomfortable with people making assumptions about me.
Do you feel uncomfortable when you walk around in the hall every day at school and make assumptions about people, or do you think that this was uncomfortable because maybe you were going to have to share it in this class?
I thought I was going to have to share it, so I was getting kind of nervous.
When you actually become accountable for your assumptions, that's what makes you nervous. And we're using the tools of critical thinking so that they're working on their thinking skills while they're negotiating this academic discourse related to who am I, do I belong, how do I relate to other people. There's different levels of being local. And so I have a question then. If there's different levels of being local, do you think there's different levels of respect that local people give to other people? It gets them to look at assumptions and to start breaking down their prejudices. And these critical thinking tools can transfer across any discipline and any content area. And one of the critical parts of our discussions is that they have to be done in an intellectually safe environment so that students feel comfortable sharing what they really think about things and using specific examples from their life.
Second grade, I remember like we were living on the streets. It's something very personal, something very deep that I always had to hide from everybody because I didn't feel like I would be accepted. Like I can share it now because I feel like we came together as a family.
The teaching strategies I don't think are unique to me as a person. I think that these are things that teachers across the globe can be using in their classrooms, and I'm seeing that there's a direct relationship between the social emotional aspects of who we are and the cognitive development that we experience.
You can use what you learn about other people's opinions and what you learn about yourself from those people's opinions, and you can apply that in the future.
And I've learned that the only way that I'm going to get my students to be able to develop their critical thinking is that they need to be emotionally connected to the content that we're studying. And they need to do it in this community of inquiry where they're really interested in hearing what other people have to say about things.
I need to know, like, well, how does everyone feel about being local? People who are not local, how does that make them feel like to be left out?
Hawaii has all these students from diverse backgrounds. And I think that this is what brings joy and interest to my teaching and keeps it new and different. Okay, awesome job, you guys.
So you see there that this process of critical inquiry and learning how to question is also really about connecting. It's about this teacher, just like Ms. Pearson said, you know, looking holistically at the students' lives and being a presence of safety where reflection and contemplation and identity can be brought out in the classroom and connected to the subject of learning. But it's, you see, she asks about how they feel, about why they think that. There is in that inquiry a real reverence for the students, for all that they bring. There is the understanding and assumption that they have things of value to share, that they can engage in problem solving, and she's making a connection with her students at every turn, you know, and helping them to make connections with their own lives. And in so doing, bursting out of the world of the classroom and coming into the world of the community. And that's what Seeds of Peace is all about. It's about bringing in that 360-degree approach, all of those connections between school spaces, between family spaces, and community spaces. So we can easily share with all of you the Philosophy for Children method. And it is a tool, of course, in our toolkit. If any of you wish to utilize it in your own schools and spaces. And it's even good for the family. I brought it into my ohana and my kids made those community yarn balls, and we used it to talk about difficult things taking place in our family for a time. Carrie, would you like to add anything?
I just wanted to reinforce that I think this tool is a really helpful tool for home as well. Asking these questions of your kids around the dinner table or on the beach as you're sitting together, just some of those open-ended questions. You'd be so surprised at what you learn when giving them the time and space to have those safe conversations. Thanks, Maya.
Mahalo. Next slide, please. So this tool, sort of Learning for Justice, is a classroom. It's set up for classroom. You can basically put in what grade you want to create learning opportunities for, what subject. You can get real granular. But there are thousands of resources here. Learning for Justice, which is what Teaching for Tolerance is now called. Their magazine and publications are now fully online instead of hard copy, but you can get so many resources, and their framework really is about, again, taking a look at often first-person documents, stories, news, and literature, and building in opportunities for inquiry and for the utilization of the classroom time to think about greater social justice, human rights, understanding and bridge building. There are podcasts that are present, and there is, I think, so much that you can do with this particular resource to build action and to design learning opportunities for your keiki. Next slide.
Real quick, Maya, one thing I do want to just share, I think one of the barriers that we often have to hosting these types of conversations and feeling confident in doing so is perhaps not having the skill sets to know how to facilitate those conversations and how to respond when it gets really uncomfortable. And so we will share with you, there's a toolkit called Hosting Difficult Conversations that was put out by the Triad Group. It's an excellent resource, and we'll make sure that that's available to all of you. There's some really good user-friendly tips in there and strategies for even having those responses and the questions to ask right in front of you when you're hosting those conversations. Thanks, Maya.
Thank you. So we are soon going to be diving more deeply into your action planning process. We are excited, and I'm going to make sure to leave the specifics of that process to your facilitators this afternoon, but did want to say that we are at this point preparing the soil and continuing to envision the harvest. You are giving lots of texture and vision and courageous possibility to the change that you want to see. And you're also really identifying your barriers as well as opportunities to achieving that vision, and beginning to identify the tools and activities that may address those barriers. Want to just remind you that this should be a multifaceted process wherein you use the 7 seeds of critical thinking, courage, conflict resolution, compassion, commitment, collaboration, and connection in constellation with one another. Really think about those seeds, and also that where possible, your action planning should involve, next slide, please, a 360-degree approach, bringing in tools that consider home, caretakers, parents, siblings, grandparents, school, teachers, counselors, administrators, and so on, and community, the human service providers, faith leaders, coaches, professionals, community orgs, and so forth. Our Ceeds co-op toolkit should really be helpful, and we're very excited for its launch. I'm handing it back to you to talk a little more about that, Carrie.
Thanks, Maya. Yeah, we just highly recommend you check out the co-op toolkit, particularly in where we are in the action planning journey. There's a lot of just really good tools. You don't have to make them up or do stretches in terms of trying to figure out what you want to implement. There's so much available here that's organized by age and grade. It's also organized by the different seeds themselves. So if you're really struggling to come up with a compassion tool, for example, you can go right into that list. And then before we end, I just want to highlight, today we focused on 3 key seeds: connection. So thinking about for our young people, who is that child that you're going to champion and continue to deepen that relationship with? The commitment that's required for us to do this type of work. And then the critical thinking strategies that we can be implementing are all 3 really important as we take this journey. And then one thing we often highlight when we're in person, and I'm not sure we did this at the first session, and that was why we do the workshops the way that we do the workshops. How many of you have been to conferences or to trainings where you go through one training, right? And then you go home with all this intention to implement everything you learned in that one training. And then all of a sudden you jump back into your daily lives that are super busy, and we just don't have time, right? We don't circle back to what we learned that day. Raise your hands if you've had that experience. I see everybody probably, right? We try to be really intentional with these 3 more in-depth workshops, and then providing you with that space with facilitators and a cohort so that you're not alone in creating your action plans. And so we hope that that model is helpful for all of you. Thank you, Ashley, for raising your hand. That's one thing we want to avoid. And then just to close out, we're going to close out with a Kid President pep talk before we move into our exceptional guest speakers for today. Next slide, please.
I think we all need a pep talk. The world needs you to stop being boring. Yeah, you. Boring is easy. Everybody can be boring, but you're gooder than that. Life is not a game, people. Life isn't a cereal either. Well, it is a cereal. And if life is a game, are we on the same team? I mean, really, right? I'm on your team, be on my team. This is life, people. You got air coming through your nose. You got heartbeat. That means it's time to do something. A poem. 2 roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Really bad. Rocks, thorns, and glass. My plants broke. Wah! Not cool, Robert Frost. But what if there really were 2 paths? I want to be the one that leads to awesome. It's like that dude Journey said, don't stop believing unless you dream stupid. then you should get a better dream. I think that's how it goes. Get a better dream and keep going. Keep going, and keep going. Will Michael Jordan have quit? Well, he didn't quit. No, he retired. Yeah, that's he retired. But before that, in high school, what if he had quit when he didn't make the team? He would have never made Space Jam. And I love Space Jam. What will be your Space Jam? What will you create will make the world awesome? Nothing if you keep sitting there. That's why I'm talking to you today. This is your time. This is my time. It's our time. We can make every day better for each other. If we're all on the same team, let's start acting like it. We got work to do. We can cry about it, or we can dance about it. We were made to be awesome. Let's get out there. I don't know everything, I'm just a kid. But I do know this. It's everybody's duty to give the world a reason to dance. So get to it. You've just been pep talked. Create something that will make the world awesome. Play ball. Oh, hi, everybody. We're all working hard to make this an awesome year for other people. And you guys are doing it. You've been super encouraging to me, so I want to return the favor. Who you know who needs some encouragement? Pass this pep talk along, and let's get the whole world to dance. I'm dedicating this video today to my friend Gabby. She's a cool kid, she likes pancakes, and she's fighting cancer like a boss. And to all you watching, who encourages you? Send them this video and let them know. So get to it. Bye.
So pancake, subscribe.
Not cool, Robert Frost. I think we all need a pep talk.
Well, I think that he did something beautiful in asking us and who encourages you, and who are you encouraging and forging and reminding us of the value of that connection. And we do need pep talks, don't we? And I hope you feel energized by his and by our time together. And thank you. And we look forward to hearing from our wonderful guest today. Back to you, Scott.
All right. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Kid President, for that pep talk. But yeah, Maya and Carrie, thank you for building this foundation of knowledge for us and inspiration for us.